Galdic.
What time better? I should just call you?
Yeah, just text me. So this time is good Yom Tov.
I spoke to some people about it. Dafka or Ruben, it's just that they want something now.
I don't know. His mother thought it would be a good fit for him. I don't know.
Because of Ruben, I don't think it's going to take it.
No? Even for next year?
Transfer student to 8th grade is not a...
Very rare. Even a good kid, like even Taka good kid, not a problem.
Everybody has their passion. If you know somebody who knows about whiskey, you can put it in. If you know someone stark, Rabbi doesn't like to push his because you force somebody, you force a kid in, and the
it's
not on board, it doesn't go. Ends up in it. And then you go, you see, it's never.
The Manal has to feel. What?
The Manal from New Square, Rabbi Revitsky.
Yeah, you wrote to me. Yeah.
So that's that.
Okay.
The other thing is to get into a shower.
That's easier.
Much easier. Shower, they already met.
Oh. Okay.
But they want acceptance for next year. I think she just wants something now. Now the 7th grade in the shower, there's a lot of harshness. It's not but it has good kids. It's a mix. It's a very big mix.
It's only if you have
The person who was the 8th grade Rabbi is Rabbi Jacobson.
Yeah, you're over here, Linkrest. In Ashar.
He has a lot of influence.
In Ashar. Ashar takes in much easier.
Much easier. I mean, that class has a lot of harshness. So has a lot of harshness.
I see.
It's not,
Okay, thank you so much.
Where is he now? By Chabad?
I believe so. It's something over there is not, I don't know, friends or something. Something is really not working. Yeah.
We got fish wise. From across the street, fish wise. He comes to Shir.
Yeah.
So he came to a shower in 8th grade. He just came to the whole conference and said they should accept him and they...
From where did he come? Mother school.
So the shower takes much easier than also fit the kid. Every mother thinks that it's different. Also Chabad itself, sometimes culturally, it doesn't always...
I know. Yeah. Of course, yeah. I understand.
We had two people from Chabad, it didn't work.
No? Rappaport? Rappaport worked, no?
It depends what you say work.
He liked it. I don't know.
The kid loves it. No hates. In the Mesivta, no one hates the yeshiva. The question is how much they fight on the yeshiva and how much the yeshiva
I see.
tell the bad.
How much the yeshiva likes them?
He went to Australia. The last couple of months, he just said culture.
Really?
He went to Australia. So yeah, they fight on it. The yeshiva did not appreciate it.
I see.
Yeshiva didn't appreciate it. That was one of them.
He also went, there was a divorce there.
Yeah, so there was one point.
Thank you.
Sometimes things align. And
Yeah, I understand, yeah.
Even though maybe
You have to respect the culture.
exactly. Sometimes a henna jacket is not a thing. We all know it's not important. But at the end of the day, the guy comes in with a blue shirt. It doesn't fit.
You have to,
It doesn't fit.
yeah, I understand. Halach lekarta
If
azal
I can
ben
help,
musa.
if I can help, I will help it.
Ayeshakayach gadol, yeah.
Push it, so.
Today's question that I asked about, take me straight, it was not from laziness. It was just, I think I was overwhelmed.
I got it, but you understood my answer.
Of course,
Very important answer.
but it was so much new things for me, so it was maybe very difficult for me.
No, I understand, yeah.
When Moshe Rabbeinu prayed that the Shekhinah shouldn't dwell in the God.
There's other Svarim. You learn other Svarim on Pesach, yeah? Yeah, you look through Haggadis, yeah? Chassidish Haggadis, they'll throw a vart. It's very inspiring. People say it by the Seder, just a nice, warm vart. The Alter Rebbe doesn't do that. He doesn't throw Werther. He goes on a very long journey. Huh? He wasn't looking for throwing. He wasn't looking for throwing. He was looking for transformation, inner transformation. Inner transformation is never fast. It's never inspiring. In a sense.
Dank for the moyach, change the moyach itself.
Yeah. Yeah, he wanted to change the brain, not just the information in the brain. Understand what I'm saying?
The brain matter and the brain lemata.
Yeah, all the brains. So you see it's alles is durchgetan, durchgearbeitet, durchgetan.
That's why it's ain't soif.
Ah?
For them is es ain't soif. It's nicht so wie die Gashmash, kulo.
Yeah, it's Ein Sof, yeah.
Andere is kulo. Because it bleibt gezeigt.
It ends, yeah.
Ends is es. The inspiration endigt sich.
Yeah.
Es endigt sich kein Mensch. Es endigt sich kein Mensch, because it's mamsha.
Yeah, yeah. And you see it at Lamashal. Ani, and then he right away says, now there's a new problem. Ach, you know, it's nicht, he doesn't, no shortcuts. Yom Tov, thank you for coming for a few minutes. Ze werden Meshige, yeah. Nicht ich, aber ze werden Meshige, yeah. Meshige, yeah? Tight Meshige. The stetig in Zoyer as Matzah is the Michel de Meimnusse. Pesach is the Chag von Emunah. The Lubavitchers are very, very zealous when it comes to their Emunah. And they don't let anything touch their Emunah. So. Verstehst? Sie werden Meshige. Sie werden Meshige. Der Rebbe kann man nicht wissen, weil er hat alles getan privat.
You didn't have a Seder with the people?
No, alles privat. Nicht Chaneke lichtlich bei Rabbi, gar nicht. Bei Mädel ist nicht gesehen.
Hanukkah also, or just basically?
Everything. Well, most Yom Tovim, huh?
Tovim, we're talking about Pesach is when the Eula comes back to all, right?
Yom Tov.
Yom Tov. So in other times you see that the Yom Tov are Mel Metal Pardesim. It sounds like the Mel comes down. When we say about Purim, it's even more. It's even lower than Metal.
Right. So it's not. It's both are true. In other words, when the Eila comes down to the Ulul could come up to the Eila. It's always
Meets the meeting in the middle.
somehow, yeah. Sometimes a little more, sometimes a little less, but there's a certain gilui from Hashem on Yom Tov that allows the Ulul to feel closer. If there wouldn't be a gilui milmayla, so then any day could be Yom Tov. There's a special thing on Yom Tov that.
Someone sent me a question. Someone asked me, does Sukkot says the Rabbi said, "Can I give the Rasha?" And the way we deal with the Rasha, we accept them into the group. Pesach we say Hakei Shina. Let's try two more.
Doesn't say Rav is a Rasha. It says that Rav doesn't have a tam and a reach.
From Medrash, maybe.
Ein by Torah Maisim Tovim. It doesn't say Rav is a Rasha, but it says, I guess, Ein by Torah Maisim Tovim. So he's comparing it to the two. Mazel tov for the hispatchuyot, was geleidt in der Freiheit. Schon angekommen? Okay, wir machen eine große Boyach am Shalom. Mehr Fehler le Gadol, mehr Shibud le Gula. Who's Taub? Okay, whoever. Say that.
You gonna have a communal Seder over there? Gonna have a Seder or
No, the Seder I do private.
always?
Not always. This year and I think last year. Recently, last year, I think 2 years or maybe 1 year.
Maybe we can make Seder in Makol.
Okay. Tracht und für Machshava Dibur und Meise. Von der ilo to the olul. There has the word to b'chayta b'chayim. Bila hamavas lanatzach. Good stuff, huh? Macha Hashem medima me'al kol panam.
Have to really listen to that.
Oh, die ganze der Bein ist nicht machen gewesen. Jetzt sitzen auf der Beine von Galle gewesen.
I know, because I wanted to get to the end of the Maimer, that's why. Okay, mit lernen. The last explanation is a very interesting explanation, that a lot of the mitzvahs that we have is for the future. In other words, Hashem says, eat matzah, because I know that in the future you won't be able to bake chametz, so therefore I'm telling you to eat matzah. In other words, usually, when we look at how we do things, we look at the past, right? The past, this and this, so therefore I do things now. What he's saying is that there's a different system. Geula is a different system. The system of Geula is that you do things now for the future. It's a much deeper way of looking at it. In other words, we always look at the past and then, I made a mistake, I won't do it again. This worked, I'll do it again. Like in business, right? You look at the past experience of the business and then you make your conclusions. Now, I mean, that's logical. But by Mitzrayim, Geula, there's a different path. You look at the future and that's how you define the present. Magid Meireshis Acheres. No, what I'm saying by Yitzias Mitzrayim. Huh? Yeah.
Somebody has to tell you.
I'm not sure.
Huh?
We can't figure that out ourselves.
In other words, I think a redeemed person doesn't only do things based on the past, you do things based on the future.
Somebody who redeemed.
A redeemed, what does it mean to be in a place of Geula? That you don't only do things as a reaction to the past. You do things based on how you want them to be in the future, or how you see them in the future, how you foresee them in the future. Well, I'll give an example. Let's say somebody has a difficult marriage, right? Okay, based on the past, right? So they continue to do things based on that. They come home, oh, this is bad. They already expect the argument and the fight and the battle and being in a bad mood, and right? Even if they're behaving, but they're already expecting the negative. What happens if a person comes and says, you know what? In the future, I want this marriage to be the best marriage in the world. That's how I'm going to start doing it now. I'm going to imagine that now, it happened already. It's the best marriage. How would you live? When you come home, what would you say? Do it right now. This didn't happen. I live now based on the future. A person says, I want to be a wealthy person. I want to be a success. Now he's very, very poor. So how does he live? He lives like a poor man, yeah? He says, but what, in the future I want to be wealthy. What happens if I would be wealthy? Okay, I don't have the money at the moment to do things with so much money, but the mindset, I'm going to live right now as though I had all the wealth in the world. I don't mean with the money. I don't mean the money. I don't mean that he should buy first class tickets to go to Australia, and he should buy all the aliyahs in shul, and he should buy a new house. And he should. Person has to work with what he has in terms of finances. But I'm talking about that his mindset is not one of poverty; it's one of success. Huh? In a state of geula, yeah. Yeah.
You can't say, okay, from now on, no more work.
No, of course. That's, I think, Magid Meireshis Acheres, that you define your present, not based on your past, but based on the future. The future that you know, the future that you want, the future that is told to you, the future that you create. In many ways, I would say that what the Baal HaTanya is saying is that all of Jewish history is experienced that way. We teach history as the study of the past, and we define today based on the past. I think the way Jews study history is we look at the future and we define the present based on the future. Like we say we're living in Gullus. What does Gullus mean? Gullus means that there's going to be Geula. In other words, it's not the natural state. we're going from Galus to Geula. So we're defining the present based on the future.
You're also looking at the past to learn how to create.
You have to look at the past, of course, to learn from it and to create the future and to understand it and to appreciate it, but not only by the past. How do Jews look at the Churban Beis HaMikdash? Yeah, we say Nachim on Tisha B'Av because Mashiach is born on Tisha B'Av. What Mashiach is born? Tisha B'Av was a Churban. The pshat is they looked at the Churban and they said, "What's the Churban? The Churban is the beginning of Galus, which is the preparation for Geula." In other words, history is not defined by the past; it's defined by the future. No, the Romans came and destroyed the Beis HaMikdash. No, the Romans came and destroyed the Beis HaMikdash for Jews to go into Galus, for Jews to be able to come back, for Jews to be able to have the Geula, for Jews to be able to have Mashiach. Oh, that's the Churban Beis HaMikdash. It's a very powerful idea. Of course, because that's how we define the present. What's Tisha B'Av? It's not just destruction. It's also destruction, of course. I'm not saying there's no present. Of course there's a present. And we cry on Tisha B'Av. We don't dance on Tisha B'Av, right? But it's that whole idea of Dima and Maya, that there's a real connection between the two. It's not...
How does someone look, let's say, the Churban of Europe?
Don't you see, through the history, you see the dialogue of HaKadosh Baruch Hu
Yeah.
and
Even the Churban of Europe. In other words, we could say two things. It was just a Churban and it's over, right? But we don't do that only. There is that element. There was a Churban, it was the worst Churban ever. And it's something of trauma and horror. There's no words for the Churban of Europe, you know. I'm not going to try to give words to it because there's no words to it. But on the other hand, what was the Jewish attitude? The Jewish attitude was that the future is going to be very bright, right? And we're going to rebuild. So they defined the Churban of Europe not only in terms of Churban, but in terms of a calling for rejuvenation. I think. So I think the last vart, Magid Mereishis Acharis, is a very powerful idea. The rest? Magid Mereishis Acharis. In the Reishis, you bring in the Acharis. Chayni Amagal, the story with Chayni in Tainus, the Gemara in Tainus, yeah. He planted the dates, right, for 70 years. So he said for the grandkids. Then Chayni Amagal woke up 70 years later, and he. That's also a very similar idea. In other words, I see the future in the present. And it redefines the present. I think psychologically, though, it's a very profound idea. People don't live by the past. Live how you want your future to be. In other words, you're going to go out of Mitzrayim, and you're going to be thrown out of Mitzrayim, and you're not going to have time to bake your dough. You're not going to have time to let your dough leaven. That's where you're going. That's the future. So you know what you should do tonight? Eat matzah. Why should I eat matzah tonight? I'm in Galus. Because tomorrow you're not going to be in Galus. You're going to be thrown out. You're not going to have time to sit around the Mitzrayim. It's a beautiful idea.
So where is it in the Haggadah you see it?
Going to help me in everybody goes through this.
I think when I could imagine what that future is and try to incorporate at least part of it now. Matzah zu sh'anu oichlem al shum ma al shum shaloi hispik b'tzekesh l'v'senu l'achmetz ad shenigla. So the Alter Rebbe says that's not the reason we're eating matzah. We're eating matzah because there's a mitzvah that on the night of Pesach you have to eat matzah. In fact, in Egypt they also had a mitzvah to eat on the night of Pesach before they were ever expelled, and even if they wouldn't have been expelled, they still had to eat matzah. So the answer is, so the last answer in the Maimer is that the mitzvah they were doing the night before was because of the future. Magid Mereishis Acharis. It was given for the future.
Nothing to do with what happened.
Because tomorrow you're going to be expelled, you won't have time to let the chametz rise. Therefore, already the night before you're eating matzah. What's the connection?
Very beginning.
Yeah.
Tachlis is Mechanech.
But Mamela. Yeah. Yeah. The ultimate chinuch is that you don't have to command. It goes b'derech Mamela. That's the chiluk of lohispik and mitzvah. Okay. A good Yom Tov, Hatzlacha Rabbi.
Something stuck in my mind, I even wrote it down. When you say, don't choose the part that dies, instead choose the part that will live. So in the company, when you have a company, that's what you do constantly. You try, and this there doesn't work. If you get stuck in your ego, it will never work. Because you try, it's not gonna work. So don't choose the part that dies. Choose something else. Choose the go to next try, or find something else that will live. In the company, I mean, I struggle with it because this is constantly developing something and it doesn't stick. So you have to pivot. Every startup has to pivot. If you don't pivot, then you just stuck to initial things. You stuck.
Yeah. Zog the Heilige Gemara. Kuf Tesvav Amud Beis.
Many years later, it caught on. Many people have to debate their ideas on what they can accept.
Kuf Tesvav Amud Beis. You see? Huh? Okay. Don't worry. No worries, don't worry. Do your thing. No worries. Okay, you see, we're holding Psachim Kuf Tesvav Amud Beis around 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13. Around 14 or 15 lines from the bottom. The line starts, Matzah Nami Lo Yatza. Amar of Shimi Barashi. You see? Rav Shimi or Rav Simi. I see in Art Scroll it's Shimi. I thought it was Simi. Rav Shimi said in the name, Rav Shimi the son of Ashi said. You got it? Kufta Svav Amud Beis. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. 15 lines from the bottom. Kufta Svav Amud Beis. We learned in the Mishnah said, Heviu lefanov matzah v'chazeres. They brought before the person running the Seder matzah and marer. So the Gemara says, Amar Reb Shimi bar Ashi, Reb Shimi the son of Ashi said, matzah lifnei kol echad ve'echad, marer lifnei kol echad ve'echad, v'charoises lifnei kol echad ve'echad. You have to bring matzah before every person sitting at the Seder, marer before every person, and charoises before every person. Remember that during the time of the Gemara, the way they used to have meals is every person had their own little bed or couch, and every person had their own little table right in front of their couch, and that's how they used to eat. So Reb Shimi holds that since the tables are separate, so every table needs to have its own matzah, its own marer, and its own charoises. You can't only have it on the table of the person who's running the Seder. Which is why the Rashbam says that today, when we all sit by one table, Reb Shimi would agree that you could bring these foods only in front of the person who is the Baal Habayis, the master of the Seder, and he will distribute a portion of matzah and maror and charoises to every single person. Yeah, that's what the Rashbam tells us, that today this halacha wouldn't apply because when everyone had their own table, they needed their own matzah, their own maror, their own charoises for the whole Seder. But now it's one table, so he will distribute it to everybody else. So from the Rashbam, it seems that the reason is because you have to say the Haggadah with the matzah and the maror in front of you and the charoises in front of you, and therefore, if I have my own table, I need it in front of me during the Seder. So each one had basically their own kaida. According to Reb Shimi, it was an obligation that everybody has to have mamash their own kaida, because everyone has to say the Haggadah over their own matzah and their own maror. since, even if they're not saying the Haggadah, since he's saying the Haggadah, the Balabayis is saying the Haggadah, and they're listening to the Haggadah, which is also what used to happen, Shemea Ka'ina, they would listen to one person saying the Haggadah, and it's like you saying it yourself. So even though he's saying the Haggadah, but they are Yoitze with his Haggadah, so they need their own Matzah and Maror, because it's like they themselves are saying the Haggadah. So that's why Reb Shimi holds that everyone had to have their own Matzah, Maror, and Chazeres. This is the view of the Rashbam, how he explains Reb Shimi. I should just say that Tosfos disagrees, and Tosfos says that the reason is because other times of the year, the owner, the Balabayas, says Hamaitzi, and he gives the bread to everybody. But Tosfos says the night of the Seder, it's better that everyone has their own food in front of them, so they don't have to wait between the bracha until they get their piece of matzah. It could take some time, and there's going to be a long hefsek between the bracha that he says and them eating. And since in this case the bracha is part of the mitzvah, because it's a special bracha ala chilas matzah, so therefore it's much better if everybody has the food on the table so they can eat it much faster. So that's why Reb Shimi says that everyone has to have their own, which according to Tosfos, this would apply also when there's one table, because it's not about the tables, it's about having the ability to eat right after you make the bracha ala chilas matzah or ala chilas maror. Reb Huna argues. I'm sorry. And Reb Shimi continues. And you don't take away the table only from the person who's saying the Haggadah. What this means is, we know that the minhag was that one person used to say the Haggadah and everybody would listen to him, and that's how they fulfilled the mitzvah of telling the story of the Exodus, because Shemea Ka'ina, when you hear it, it's like you're saying it. We know that there was a minhag in the beginning of the Seder to take away the table with all the food on it, and they had little tables, in order to arouse the curiosity of the children. They should start asking, why are you taking away the table? So Reb Shimi says, even though everyone needs their own matzah, maror, charoises, not everybody has to do this minhag of moving away the table. You could just take away the one table from the Baal Habayis. That's what he says. The akiras hashulchan, the taking away the table, only from the person who's saying the Haggadah. Rashi, by the way, holds that akiras hashulchan doesn't necessarily mean you move away the table. It means picking up the kaira. You pick up the kaira from on top of the table. That's what Rashi says. Oikrinas hashulchan doesn't mean you have to take away the table. It means you pick up the kaira, which is a different interpretation. But the Rashbam says that's not enough. Akiras hashulchan means you move away the table. But today's day, you can't do that. We have a big table. You have 20 people around the table where you take the table to the kitchen. So he says, today's day, when we all have one table, it's going to be too hard to move away the whole table. It could take a very long time, and it's a big tercha. So he says, what you do is you take the kaira and you move it to the edge of the table, and that's called akiras shulchan. You're not taking away the table, but you're moving the food to the other side of the table. That's how the Rashbam explains what we do today. He says you take the kaira with the matzah and the maror and the shnei tafshilin, the zraya and the beit, you put it at the end of the table, v'dai lanu b'kach. So this is the view of Reb Shimi. Everyone needs their own matzah, maror, charoises, but not everybody has to remove the table or the kaira. Reb Huna Omer kula nami lifnei misha Omer Haggadah. I disagree. The matzah, the maror, the charoises, everything could be only in front of the person who says the Haggadah. Just like you don't have to take away the table only from the person who's saying the Haggadah, you don't have to prepare the food only in front of the person who is saying the Haggadah. Reb Huna agrees that it's fine if he himself has the matzah, maror, charoises in front of him. That is inclusive for everyone enjoying and celebrating the Yom Tov with him and being Yotzei the mitzvah. It's enough, and we don't have to have everyone having their own kaira. V'hilchasik Reb Huna, the halacha is like Reb Huna. He can have the food and then in the right time distribute matzah, maror, etc. to all the people around the table. Says the Gemara, Lama Oikrinas hashulchan. What's this idea of taking away the table before saying the Haggadah that we're discussing? Amri debei Rabbi Yanai, the people in the Yeshua Rabbi Yanai said, Kadesh Yakiru Tinoikas. The children should recognize what is going on, because whenever there's change, it arouses and triggers the inquisitive curiosity of children. Yakiru Atinoikas, you want to make them alert. So you don't just go through the routine, you do things different. V'yishalu, and then they'll ask a question. They'll ask, why are you taking away the table before we eat? Imagine you have a little table in front of you the way it used to be, and they take away the table. We just washed for karpas, we just dipped something, why are you taking away the table? And that will allow us to respond and tell them the story, because as we know that the right way of fulfilling the mitzvah of telling the story is by responding to questions. The pasuk says, Ki yisholcha vincha machar lemer. When your child will ask you, v'amarta levincha, you should tell him avodim hayinu. That's what Moshe Rabbeinu tells us in Parshas Vaschana. So from here we learn that the mitzvah is, it should be with shaila and shuva. When your child asks you, you should tell him. We want the child to ask, which is why we do all of these unique things and changes on this night in order to create an environment and an ambiance of questions, of curiosity, of inquisitiveness, of wonder. So that's the first thing we do. We will remove the table. The Gemara tells a story. Abaya have a Yosef kamei de Rabba. Abaya, when he was a child, was sitting in front of Rabbi. It was the night of the Seder. We have to remember who Abaya was. Abaya was an orphan. His father passed away before he was born. His mother died shortly after he was born. And therefore Abaya was raised by his uncle. His uncle's name was Rabbi. Rabbi was Abaya's uncle and his teacher. He taught him Torah and he raised him as a father because Abaya didn't have his own parents. That's why it says Abaya was sitting by Rabbi. It was a Seder of Pesach and Abaya was sitting in front of Rabbi. Chaza Abaya saw the kamadli taka mikamei, that they took away, they picked up the table from Rabbi. It was the beginning of the Seder. Abaya was a little kid, he was a baby. And he sees that they pick up the table. They kamadli taka, they pick up the table, mikamei, from Rabbi to take it away. Omar Lahu, Abaya says to the people with a question, Adayin loika achlinon, we haven't eaten yet. Asu kami akri taka mikamon, and they're coming and taking away the table from us. We haven't eaten. Omar le Rabbi. Rabbi tells this little boy, Abaya, Patarton miloymar manishtana. You have exempted us from saying the manishtana. We could right away begin, Avodim hayinu. We're done. Abaya naturally burst out. He says, what are you doing? We haven't eaten yet. Why taking away the table? Rabbi tells him, Patarton, you exempted us from saying the manishtana. We can get straight into the meat and the potatoes of the Agadah. We can get straight into the story. In other words, we know the Mishnah is going to tell us soon the order of questions, manishtana. And we always need these questions and answers because we don't tell the story without questions. But the moment, and if there's no children, the adults have to ask questions. And even if there's nobody there, you have to ask yourself the questions. So Rabbi said, once Abaya asked a question, we don't have to do any more the manishtana and ask these questions. He exempted us from the manishtana, and we can immediately start with avodah mayinu lepari b'mitzrayim and move on. So this is a very interesting story, which would seem to indicate that the question of Abaya substituted the need for manishtana. Even though he didn't ask one of the questions of the manishtana, he asked another question. He asked his own question: why taking away the table? But it seems like, and that's how the Rashbam explains the Gemara, that basically you don't need to do manishtana. They could skip straight to avodim hayinu. Right. So basically, according to this, the manishtana is only there for those who are not asking. To make sure there's a question. Like Chevra asked, which is a fascinating insight. Basically, Abaya had his own question. We're good. Next, Patarton, we can move on to the Seder. Because the purpose has been done. You're wondering, and now, let me tell you the story and you'll understand. You'll understand why we're doing all of these, strange things. So basically, we'll tell Abaya, don't worry, we're still going to bring back the table, we're going to eat, etc. I should just say that Tosfos argues, if you look in Tosfos, Kedei Sheyakir Hatinik V'Yishal, you see the last Tosfos. Kiloymar Umitoich Kach Yovoy L'Shol B'Shar Dvar. We move away the table, so he should ask this, and then he'll ask other things. But the question of taking away the table doesn't exempt us from the manishtana. In the story of Abaya, the Gemara only explicitly tells us about the first question of Abaya, not the last question. In other words, we're hoping that the first question, why you took away the tail before the meal, and the father will say, don't worry, we're going to bring it back. We still have to dip the maror in charosis. So the child is going to say, why do we dip twice, taka, tonight? And that will generate all of the other questions and conversations. So Tosfos says that's what happened by Abaya. He didn't only ask about the first question with the table, he asked also the other questions. When Abaya finished and asked the Manashtana, then Rabbi said, since you asked the questions, we don't have to ask the questions. That's what he meant. He meant patarton. You exempted us from asking the Manashtana. If you wouldn't have asked, right, we would have asked to ask the Manashtana because you were already asking, so we don't have to ask. That's a completely different interpretation in the Gemara, where Manashtana does have to be asked. But the Rashbam doesn't tell us that. The Rashbam says that you exempted us from completely asking the Manashtana. Why? Because the moment you asked us, Manashtana, why are you taking away the table, we don't have to go through the regular Manashtana. We just have to answer your question. And the answer is because Avadim ayinu l'farei b'Mitzrayim, and therefore, it's a completely different night. We do today strange things because we want to teach and we want to explain to the children and we want to make changes, etc. Very interesting argument. Huh?
Said numerous times, they're all focused on the Seder. All the Seder is on children.
The children.
But there are situations where no children are around.
Of course.
Find the requirement that you must.
You're right. You're right. 100%.
So there must be another layer there.
Yeah, you're right.
You gotta talk to the child himself.
You got to speak to the child inside of yourself. You got to levincha, your own inner child, right? Arouse the curiosity of the child inside yourself. Amar Shmuel said, Lechem Oini. The Torah calls matzahs Lechem Oini in Parshas Re'eh. It says, don't eat chametz, 7 days you should eat matzah. Lechem Oini. What does Lechem Oini mean? Says Shmuel, Lechem Sha'oinin alav dvarim. It's a bread upon which you recite many things. The word oinin means, what does he say oinin? Recite? Bread on which you declare many things. In other words, the whole Haggadah and the Hallel is read with the matzah, in the presence of the matzah, when the matzah is in front of us. That's why we say by the Haggadah, matzah zu shanu oichlim al shoma. So the word oini comes from the word like ve'anisa v'amarta in Parshas Kisava. You should declare and say, you should respond and say. It's the matzah, it's the bread that comes with recitations, with declarations, with explanations. That's Shmuel. Tanya Namihachi, we also have a brisa to support this. Lechem oinish, lechem sha'oinin alav dvarim harbe. The bread upon which you declare many ideas. Davar acher, another explanation is lechem oini oniksiv. Even though it says oini, so Shmuel says it's like the word oine or oinim, like oinim amein, right? But it could be pronounced as oni. Remember in a Sefer Torah, there's no vowels, there's no nekudos. So you could pronounce it in different ways, and that's part of the plan. So when it says lechem oni, you can also read it as ani. It says ani without a vav. Doesn't say with a vav, then it could only be read as oini with a chaylam, but it just says oini without a vav, so you could pronounce it oini, which is the correct pronunciation. But you can also pronounce it as ani. What does this mean? It's lechem ani. It's the bread of the poor man. Me ani darka shedarka beprusa, just like a poor man is happy, is content with a broken piece of bread, not with an entire whole loaf of bread. So that's the point, is that this is bread of ani, that the matzah should be eaten the way a poor man eats his bread. When a poor man begs and gets bread, he usually doesn't get an entire loaf of bread. He gets a prusa. A prusa is a fragmented, what do they say prusa? A broken piece? Just the translation.
Broken loaf, yeah.
A broken loaf of bread. That's how you give the ani bread. We have a famous pasuk in Yeshaya, the Haftarah of Yom Kippur. Haloi parois la'ra'ev lachmecha. Right? Break off and give the hungry person part of your bread. You give the hungry person a part of the bread. So darkei beprusa, his derech is to eat a broken piece of bread. Afkan beprusa. The chiddush is that tonight, what type of matzah should you eat? You should eat a broken piece of matzah. As Rashi tells us, Afkan beprusa, levorich al achilas matzah. The bracha of achilas matzah comes on a broken piece of matzah. And this is the entire source of why we break our matzah. we call yachatz. And when we make the bracha, lachilas matzah, we're eating a matzah. We eat also from this broken piece of matzah because this is lechem ani. It has to be the bread of a poor man. If it's a whole matzah, it's not lechem ani. Lechem ani you can only fulfill if it's a prusa, if it's a broken piece of matzah, because that's what the poor man eats. That's the second pshat of lechem oini, not oini as anisa from the word oinim, but from the word ani, the brach of a poor man.
To symbolize that we were poor before the Gula? To symbolize that the Jews were in a low state before the Gula? Because that night they got a lot of wealth from the Mitzrayim, and they were going out. They were really rich.
I guess it represents the transformation from poverty to wealth on one level, yeah. And also matzah, represents the idea of bittul, of humility. There's a certain poverty, an openness to great wealth.
Eating it at the same time.
Right. In other words, there's a certain humility that comes hand in hand with wealth. Real humility constitutes real wealth, and great wealth brings to real humility. True greatness is humility, because in the presence of an infinity, humility is the only response, right? Now here's an interesting idea. Do you need lechem mishnah? Do you need 2 whole matzahs on Pesach as well? So this is a big argument between in the times of the Gaonim and the Rishonim. There was the view of the Rif and the Rambam who said that this replaces the lechem mishnah. Usually Shabbos and Yom Tov, you need 2 whole loaves of bread. So you would need 2 whole matzahs. But since the Gemara says lechem ani, so Pesach, the way we do lechem mishnah is 1 whole matzah and 1 broken matzah. This is the opinion of the Rif and the Rambam and other poskim, that you need 1.5 matzahs basically, or 1 and a piece of matzah. One opinion. But many other Rishonim disagree, and they hold that the lechem mishnah of Pesach is what? Is you still need 2 whole matzahs, just like every Shabbos and Yom Tov. That's not different. Just because on Pesach we add lechem ani, it's an addition, it's not a subtraction. It's there to add a 3rd matzah, not to take away from the whole 2 matzahs. In other words, Pesach is like any other Yom Tov. You need 2 whole matzahs. In addition to the 2 whole matzahs, you also need a component of aniyus, a component of poverty. It's a very interesting machlokes. According to the first opinion, the lechem ani replaces the lechem mishnah. It replaces the lechem shlema. The lechem shalom replaces the whole. You have 1 whole and 1 broken. According to the second opinion, no, you need 2 whole matzahs like every Yom Tov, like every Shabbos. You're not supposed to have a broken challah, you're supposed to have a whole challah. In addition, you also have a broken one, which is why we use 3 matzahs, right? And we put the top whole one, the top of the whole one, and then the yachatz we do for the middle matzah, and we break it, and then we do the bottom matzah. And that's why when we make hamoitzi lechem in haaretz, right? What do? We hold on to the 3 matzahs, so that way you have all the opinions. You made hamoitzi on 2 whole matzahs, plus you made hamoitzi on the broken matzah. You made hamoitzi on everything. Then for alachilas matzah, which is a unique bracha for Pesach, right? That we do on the top 2 matzahs. We do it on the top one and on the bottom one, because within the second opinion itself, there's 2 opinions. Most of the Rishonim, the Rosh, and most of the poskim hold that hamoitzi goes on the top matzah, the whole one, and alachilas matzah goes on the middle one, on the broken one. But there are other opinions, the Raven, who holds the opposite, that hamoitzi goes on the middle one and alachilas matzah goes on the top one. So for hamoitzi we do all 3 because we have all opinions, we do all 3. And then when you come to the second bracha, you're doing it on the top 2. So we make hamoitzi and alachilas matzah, right? Alachilas matzah, we hold the top matzah and the middle matzah. According to the first opinion, basically the hamoitzi is on the top matzah and the alachilas matzah is on the middle matzah, right? So you'll make now alachilas matzah, but you also want to include a second opinion. So that's why you don't only make alachilas matzah on the middle matzah, you'll also include the top one for alachilas matzah, because there is an opinion that hamoitzi is on the middle and alachilas matzah is on the top matzah. Yeah. Now, yeah. even if you say alachilas matzahs for the broken matzah, right? And you still have to have lechem mishnah. Why by hamoitzi lechem in haaretz do we hold all three matzahs, even the middle one? Because ein ma'avirin ala mitzvahs. You're not supposed to overpass a mitzvah. And since you have now a mitzvah of matzah, right, so we don't just skip the middle matzah, so we hold all three matzahs. We make a moitzi, then we make a lachilas matzah, and then we break off a kazayas from the top matzah and from the middle matzah, and we eat two kazayas, and one from the top matzah, one from the middle matzah. That is the minig in most places. Yeah. The middle one is the ani, yeah, the broken one. The broken one, right. The broken one, yeah. The Gemara says, Davar Acher, another opinion. Ma darke shel ani hu masik ve'ishtay oife. Just like a poor man, he ignites the oven. What's it, masik? He heats up the oven and his wife bakes. Afkan nami hu masik ve'ishtay oife. By Pesach also, he heats up the oven and his wife bakes. Meaning, a poor person is afraid, he can't afford wood. So if he has wood and he puts it into the oven, he tells his wife, please prepare the dough, because if the fire goes out, we're not going to have more wood to be able to stoke the oven again. So we have to work very fast. We have to work together. I'll prepare the heat, you prepare the dough. Right when it's hot, we'll put in the dough and it'll bake. There's no time to waste, because if I heat up the oven and then I go bake and I knead and I'll do all that, by that time, the twigs that I had could burn out, and that's it, I have no fire. In other words, because of their poverty, they have to work together and work fast. So he says that's why it's called lechem ani, because matzah has to be done the same way by everybody. You heat up the oven, and she has to bake, because if not, it could become chametz. There has to be this concept of swiftness. Of swiftness. So that's what the Rashbam explains, that basically because of their poverty they have to work together. He works on the oven, she works on the dough. The Ran says they work together because they're starving. That's the idea. But the bottom line is that they work together. So that's the concept here of he heats up the oven and she bakes it, shaloi tachmitz. We don't want to delay time, right? If he starts making the dough and then he heats the oven and it could rise, they just work together fast. That's the idea of ani. So it's a completely different interpretation. It's not the idea of ani that it has to be a broken piece. The idea of ani is that you have to bake it with teamwork, with swiftness, with alacrity. Do it together with your wife. In other words, make sure it's done with great alacrity and swiftness so that it doesn't become chametz. That's a completely different interpretation in lechem ani. Just like a poor man, he works together with his wife. They do it fast, either because they don't have enough wood or because they're hungry. That's how matzah should be done, even by wealthy people, because we're afraid it should be chametz. A completely different interpretation. According to this, you don't have to break it. It's not about breaking. It's a whole matzah. Yeah, it's a completely different idea. I should say there's a third interpretation of Rav Haigon, a fascinating interpretation, completely different interpretation of the Gemara. It's quoted in the Rush, and he says that the Bryce is not talking about swiftness. It's not talking about that you have to prepare matzah with swiftness. The point is that they do it on their own. It's teamwork between a husband and a wife. Usually people who have more money, they go to the bakery and they buy bread from others. But because they can't afford, so they always do everything on their own, because the baker always has to charge extra, because he also has to make some money, right? He can't just charge. Every storekeeper, you have to charge a little extra because you buy the merchandise, and then you have to charge for your labor, and you also need a little money. And the poor people can't afford anything extra, so they always do things on their own. So that's the idea. He does it together with his wife. In other words, they have to work together. They can't rely on other people because they don't have enough money. It's not about the swiftness. It's simply about doing it themselves. So Rabbi Gon says what he means here is that the Torah calls matzah lechem ani to tell us that people should bake matzah on their own and not buy from other people. Not rely on the hashgacha, the supervision of other people, but actually do it on their own. And based on this Rabbi Gon, there's a minhag by some Jews that they really like to go and bake matzah on their own and eat their own matzah rather than commercial matzah that they buy from other people, supervised by other people, made by other people. This is a very completely different interpretation of what it means. Not about the swiftness, but about doing it on your own and not relying on others. That's where you have to learn from poor people. So we have completely three different interpretations of ani. One is ani, that it has to be broken. The matzah itself has to be poor matzah, meaning broken piece of bread. Not a how you make it. It's what you have right now. A second interpretation is about how you prepare it. It has to be like a poor person who works very, very fast because he doesn't have enough wood or because he's hungry. And the third interpretation of Rabbi Gon is it's not about what the matzah is right now, that it's broken, or how you make it fast or slow, but rather the fact that you make it on your own and you don't buy. Okay, Seder. Everybody have a wonderful Yom Tov, a kosher, a freilich and Pesach to you and your families, but to Klal Yisrael. We should be zoiche to eat the carbon Pesach this year with the real sandwich. Matzah, mor, and Pesach.